Hello, this is Paradigm Shift 314. I am your host, Kuhani Mwadilifu, and I'm interviewing a great activist by the name of Minister Paul Scott. He is the founder of the Black Hoodie Brigade in Durham, North Carolina. He's debated many conservative pundits like um, what's his Tucker Carlson.
Sean
He
Hannity
is Sean Hannity,
and the rest
and
of them,
he's been who else?
and the rest of them.
And Andy who?
I said Sean Hannity and the rest of them. But proceed.
Okay. So we will be talking about Cointelpro and what to look out for tonight. This is a very special show. So first question that I have for you, Minister Paul Scott, is what is Cointelpro, first of all?
Mhm. COINTELPRO is the counterintelligence program that was instituted by the FBI in the 60s for the most part. And it's counterintelligence program. And what he did was he tried to stop subversive movements because he was one of the people who advocated or propagated the idea that the communists were going to take over America. So his fear was that American groups were being influenced by the communists, like McCarthy, uh, so to speak. But while most black people or African people talk about COINTELPRO, they're talking about the hate division, the black hate division, which came about around 1968 or so, where he focused on black groups, specifically the Black Panther Party, and tried to annihilate the Black Panther Party. But it had been going on before then. Not only black groups, but any groups that he considered subversive. Because the thing about J. Edgar Hoover, people tried to say he's a white supremacist. He thought black people were a threat. No, study your history. J. Edgar Hoover, as a white supremacist, did not think black people were intellectually capable of doing anything subversive. His fear was that black people or African people would join the Communist Party and the communists would lead them to overthrow America. It's a difference. That way, he could still keep his white supremacist credentials, but still attack black people.
Hmm.
See,
See,
people overlook that part. People say, well, he hated black. He thought black people were a threat. He wanted to prevent the rise of a black messiah. That is true. Kenneth O'Reilly's book, Racial Matters. That's true. But his main fear, while still keeping his white supremacist credentials, was that black people were being misled by the communists.
hmm. See, that's very interesting because I think a lot of African Americans, when we try to study the civil rights movement, we tend to not know about the Cold War
Mhm.
and how the communists, how they were trying to use the black intelligentsia as a way to get more numbers. There was a book that I'm pretty sure that you've read. You've read Tony Martin's "Race First" by about Marcus Garvey.
About Garvey, yes. That's probably
One,
the premier book about Garvey, Race First. If you haven't read Race First, definitely get Race First. But yeah.
mm, that's an excellent work. And when I had read that book, I was amazed at the fact that Marcus Garvey during that time period had complete control over the black intelligentsia. And when he was at the apex of his power, the white Marxists and the black Marxists, they did not have that intellectual hold over the African American intelligentsia up until he got deported. And then when he got deported, that's when they were really in control of the black intelligentsia. And I'll add one more thing. Even when you read that same book, you discover that Russian revolutionary Leon Trotsky was in talks with the African American activist Claude McKay about trying to make black Red Army soldiers. So I think that's something that African Americans tend not to, they tend to ignore it or they don't know about it.
Now, I'm not that hip of Garvey's relationship with the intelligentsia, because really the intelligentsia is, as by definition, if you're talking about the intellectual class, they were more of Du Bois's people.
Okay.
Now, Garvey tried to unite all African people anywhere between 2 million on the low end and 11 million on the high end. So, of course, he had members of the intelligentsia with part of him. But when you're really talking about them, you're talking about the talented 10th. You're talking about Du Bois and that crew. So, yeah, I got to go back and read about Garvey's connection with the intelligentsia. But when that word hits, my mind always goes to Garvey and the Harlem Renaissance. I mean, not Garvey, Du Bois and the Harlem Renaissance.
Yeah, I think I was using intelligentsia in the wrong context. Like next time, I think I should use he had the minds of the regular black folk in that time period.
Yeah, that is 100% accurate.
Because they couldn't penetrate the regular black folk. Like we know from a historical fact that the regular black folk was down with Garvey. They didn't know what Du Bois was talking about. You know what I'm saying?
By Du Bois' own admission, Du Bois said he was not a leader of men. He didn't get along with people. He was a snob. So by his own admission, he said, I am not a leader of men. Yeah. That's why Du Bois said that he could not, he didn't take responsibility for Garvey, what happened to Garvey, because Du Bois really didn't have that much power. Read his autobiography. He didn't get along with people. Did he play a role in it? Yeah, but it's overhyped, the role that Du Bois as an individual had in overthrowing Garvey. I mean, there are other people you can point at more than Du Bois.
Correct. From what I read on Race First was that it was for real the communists that got him deported. They were the ones that was doing, from the subject of the show, they were doing so-called Cointelpro agent type of activities at his events, so to speak. They were like passing out leaflets like come to our events instead of coming to his. They were doing things like that to him. And they were also
that's what they've always done is that's just part of their tactic. Even today, that is part of the socialist. And like I said, I have no problem with socialism. I'm a fan of socialism as an ideology. But as far as a political movement, that's what they do. That's going all the way back to the Scottsboro Boys case. They have infiltrated black organizations and black movements. That's part of their tactic. And they're really not ashamed of it. That's what they do. But yeah, take a critical look at the Scottsboro Boys case.
I will.
A critical look.
Because I've heard of it, but I don't know. I know a little bit of like surface level. Yeah. I haven't studied it completely in depth, which I will do in the future.
Yeah, what white radical movements have done, especially when you're talking about the Communist Party of the Communist Party, they have, and undermined is a strong word, they have manipulated black movements, and that's what they do. That's part of their strategy.
Hmm. Now, I'd like to ask, with your activist experience,
Mm.
um, have you encountered any person that may have been on a counterintelligence measure? Did you ever feel like you were being followed? Because when I look at, like, and the reason why I ask this is because when I look at Black YouTube or these new public intellectuals that come up out of nowhere, like literally, um, I tend to see that people use that term agent or Cointelpro rather quite loosely. And so I think it's important for us to really know what a so-called agent is, to really know what COINTELPRO is, to really know what agent activity is, because those poison pen letters are real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I've heard of instances where, it could be somebody who, this person may, he may have a particular occupation, and then they fall out, and then they start saying, "Oh, this person's a agent," and trying to destroy his or her livelihood as a result of that, not knowing the actual occupation of the person. So, could you tell the people what to look out for, because this is very, like, this is life and death situation for activists and alike.
I would give first as a point of reference the best person you could probably pose that question to, who, in my opinion, gave the best contemporary definition and argument, is Supreme Understanding. You familiar?
I've heard of that name. Isn't he
The
like a
author.
5%er or something?
Yeah, yeah. Supreme
Okay.
Understanding put out a piece around 2010 called How to Spot an Agent. If you can get your hands on that, that breaks it down perfectly. But COINTELPRO actually ended in the 70s. Baba Steve Coakley said, if they say something ended, that really means they just call it something else. So he started calling it Now in Telpro. More recently, in the whole Black Lives Matter era, it's called the War Against Black Identity Extremists. Same process, they just changed the name. But the thing we got to keep in mind, and you said that if I could give anybody any advice, um, keep your circle small. Watch out for agent provocateurs. And I would say, even more than agent provocateurs, watch out for what they call useful idiots. Useful idiots. It's a thing. Useful idiots. That's people who they use who just don't know any better. No, they're not on any payroll. Somebody could just say, whisper in their ear and get them to do something. Useful idiots. So I would say useful idiots probably would be a bigger threat than somebody on the payroll right now, because I mean, with really, you got AI, you got social media, you got location, everything. There's really nothing that they can really find that you're not really saying on YouTube anyway. Everything's on YouTube. Everything you do is on YouTube. Your location's on YouTube. They're taking, Facebook even has the technology. I don't know how much they use it now. If somebody's in a picture with you, they can see who everybody in the picture with you. They can see track their identity. But yeah, be careful of those useful idiots, man. And then again, you have people who do things for no reason at all. People don't need a reason to undermine movements. So COINTELPRO wasn't one of our only problems. The FBI was just one program. That's the one that gets the most attention, because Garvey wasn't even the FBI when the Coover and them came after Garvey. It wasn't even the FBI, it was the BOI. It was the Bureau of Investigation. So if you're looking for documentation of the FBI versus Garvey, you're not going to find it that much. But look under BOI, Bureau of Investigation under Garvey. Now you could probably find it in the archives, but really you're going to have to look under Bureau of Investigation instead of Federal Bureau of Investigation.
Right, because Garvey was still in. He started getting really in power when Hoover wasn't even in the picture yet.
He was in the picture.
Well,
but the name switched.
Okay.
And so it went from during that period, it went from Bureau of Investigation to Federal Bureau of Investigation. But Hoover really didn't really start see, back then Hoover was going after the mob, but he really didn't start going after black people, really. But then again, he did go after King and Malcolm. But you're talking about 1968 when he just said, "Nah, we're gonna wipe them all out." Because 1968 through 1972,
when Hoover was taking down black movements,
the Panthers specifically.
Yes, because there was a lot of internal stuff that was, bringing the Black Panthers down as well,
But you said it correctly about the poison pen letters. They had their own propaganda machine. And I know we talked about this on the last show, but I'm going to repeat it again for your listeners. What these people do is they use our weaknesses against us. It's already there. They just use it against us. Suppose I'm under, you do your show, and I'm under trolling you with comments. It would not take much for anybody to recruit somebody who's hating on me. So they use our weaknesses against us. With King, allegedly, he had a thing for women. How hard was it to exploit that? When you had Karinga versus the Panthers, that macho male energy, wanting to be the revolutionary, how hard would it be to exploit that? See, when you're talking about poison pen letters, you're talking about a basic strategy. You're not talking about millions of dollars in surveillance. You're not talking about agents following people. You're talking about a pen and a piece of paper and a stamp. Go back and read the book FBI's. Go back. It's a book called FBI's. The writer escapes me right now. But we talk about the FBI versus the radicals. The FBI declared war on the writers too, going back to Claude McKay. They had something called, besides the poison pen letters, they had something called ghost readers, where they would go and read all the works of black authors and devise ways to counter with their propaganda what the black authors were doing. FBI's, EYES, great book.
See, that's very scary. Where they're reading our literature to know our literature better than we do.
Yeah, they had a whole bureau called that they call them ghost readers, and their task was to read black writers and develop their own propaganda. Nobody talks about that. Yeah, the writers of the Harlem Renaissance. Yeah, FBI's, EYES, excellent book.
See, I wonder, would you agree with this? Do you think that these intelligence agencies are putting more stock in trying to recruit the generation of college students that come out of institutions of higher learning.
Yeah, I mean that's what the FBI did and the CIA, except the ghetto informant program. You familiar?
Tell me about it.
Okay. Kenneth O'Reilly has done a lot of good work, or at least 2 books on that mention the ghetto informant program. And the ghetto informant program was when they would hire people who hung out at bookstores. Yeah. People who hung out at pool halls. People who hung out in the hood. And the FBI would use them to spy on people. It was called the ghetto informant program. At one point, they had over 72,000 agents. Kenneth O'Reilly's book on racial matters.
I've came across that book before, but I never chose to purchase it.
Yeah, but that should be the Bible. If you want to study Cointelpro, that's the Bible right
there. I would also say to Black people, we should also be trying to read John le Carre novels. Are you familiar with John le Carre? John le Carre was a writer who started off being MI6, right? And he wound up going back into the cold, meaning like retiring. And so he wound up writing a lot of spy novels, like The Spy Who Came In from the Cold, The Constant Gardener. And these are considered one of the most best spy novels ever written because he was one of those people. And I've read mostly all of his books. And one thing that always comes out and creeps out is the fact that intelligence agencies recruit people who know how to speak multiple languages.
Yep.
Because I'm going to give an example like that happened to me. I'm not going to say necessarily where I figured that I was probably in the presence of one of those people. Was like one day I was talking to someone and this person told me that she knows how to speak multiple languages. And so, it was me and her one time, just a regular Zoom. It was just me and her. And I asked her, I said, I wouldn't be, since it was just me and her, I was just like, I could be a little personal. And I said, so-and-so. I've read John le Carre novels. I have a bit of a surface level familiarity with the intelligence community. I wouldn't be wrong to suggest that since you know how to speak more than 5 languages, that you're probably intelligent. And so she looked at me kind of like I could see in her eyes, she was like, what the heck? Like, but then at the same time, she's still, stone faced. But the way she was looking, she was like, how does this Black person know that? You know what I'm saying? And then I asked a few of my friends who was part of a particular fraternal order. And this person in the fraternal order said, yeah, she's one of those people because even in LA, there was times where, he was in school and, there was discoveries that, a lot of the teachers that teach there at particular schools at LA are also undercover cops dealing with high school and middle school kids. So, a lot of people tend to think that agents are like the James Bond. I'm, sleeping with a bunch of women, killing people. It's more, I'm posing as a college professor at this HBCU somewhere trying to figure out who's going to be the next Black Messiah. And so I think that has to be talked about and stressed about a lot more,
Well, what about the gatekeepers at the HBCUs would say if it's going to be another Black Messiah is going to come through us?
This is the funny part, because when we when I say I'm familiar with people like Lenin and Trotsky and Ho Chi Minh. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of these people do come from a bourgeoisie's background
Mm-hmm.
because they've had the time to think because they've been given a lot of resources, a lot of books, etc. But we still got to keep in mind, as Carter G. Woodson says in The Miseducation of the Negro, the more the Negro gets educated, the more he or she hates his own people. So, looking at the intellectual bourgeois amongst the African American community, I would be hard pressed to believe that it's going to come through them. I think it'll come through the regular, you know what I'm saying, the
The
regular
lumpen
black.
proletariat.
Hmm?
The lumpen proletariat.
See, I know about that term because I just got finished reading, the Black Panther Revolutionary Suicide. So yes, I honestly do think that those would be the people that will come through in the end.
Mm. I mean, that's Marxist doctrine. So, but you know how many safeguards there are within capitalism that prevent that from happening?
Mm.
That's factored in to capitalism. Human greed is factored into capitalism. So the kid, you ever heard of a phrase, bread and circuses?
No, I haven't. Could you go
Okay.
into it?
The rapper Saigon had a album by that name. Anyway, bread and circuses is the phrase that means that as long as you give the people bread and entertainment, you don't have to worry about them revolting. Give them hip hop. Give them a Drake versus Kendrick Lamar battle. Keep them occupied. Give them bread, give them circuses. And you will never have to worry about the masses revolting. How many revolts have we had in the last 30 years? 30 years? 35 years. Nope, square. I'll go back. 40 years. And how many times have they used the bread and circus technique?
Now I see that all the time because when I look at people in my generation, I'm 25 years old. Uh, we're not worried about, you know what I mean? We worried about like twerking and Kendrick Lamar battles, and we're more focused on trivial things than we are freedom.
Since we last talked, we talked before the Cat Williams thing, right?
Correct?
Cat Williams was about to expose the whole industry. Everybody. White, black, everybody. All of a sudden, the attention focused to hip hop battles. Think that was an accident?
I don't.
1 minute he's about Cat Williams got the whole energy going to exposing the industry. Next week, it's all about hip hop battles. Energy shifted. I don't think that was an accident. I'm not entirely, and this is a very unpopular opinion, I'm not entirely certain that hip hop itself wasn't a diversion to keep people from going become revolutionaries. They wanted to become rappers. I'm talking about even conscious hip hop. I'm not talking about gangster hip hop. I'm talking about even conscious hip hop could have been a diversion so that instead of being revolutionists, they want to be rappers. And sign a contract that forever binded them to being entertainers instead of revolutionists. There was I don't know if it's still available, but there was a brother named Cedric Muhammad, Big Sid. He used to have a website called Black Electric, and he did a series called Rap Cointelpro. If I don't know if it's still out there, I don't know if it's been erased from the internet. About 20 years ago, he did a whole series about rap and COINTELPRO. I think he coined that phrase, rap COINTELPRO. People think I did it, but nah, that was Cedric Muhammad. He came up with that.
Do you think that, because when I think of like celebrities and social issues, right? I'm always going back to that speech, that little interview that Malcolm X made about celebrities and how black people are the only people on the planet that look at celebrities as leaders. And, he said, of course, people like Dick Gregory and Sidney Poitier and all these other cats are going to be mainstream, but they're not going to be they're not actually going to be really talking anything too radical because they still need to keep their entertainment jobs. So it's like I'm always looking at these rappers like, yeah, you make a tweet, like you're down or something, and then you just going back doing what you usually do.
And if you do, you wake up the next morning, you find out you owe the IRS $10 million. Seriously. James Brown, Red Fox. Yeah.
Even there's something that there's I guess a theory that came out about Sam Cooke.
About him
as well. Say it again.
About him owning his masters and being tight with the Nation of Islam.
I heard that from Etta James in her autobiography a few years ago that she said like he did own his masters, and this was during the time of where the mob was like really in control of the music industry, and he was also working with Malcolm X and someone else allegedly, and so
that's pretty much documented. That's pretty much documented.
Okay, I didn't know that. I always thought
it was Sam Cooke, Muhammad Ali, Malcolm X, and Jim Brown. There's a movie on either Amazon Prime. I think it's on Amazon Prime called One Night in Miami. It's about that.
Okay.
Now, to the degree they were tight, I wasn't there, but yeah, they had a relationship.
And we know what happened to Sam Cooke.
Allegedly. Well, actually, we don't know.
Correct. I stand corrected on that.
I mean, we know what's said, but we also know that the math ain't mathing.
Definitely.
There are 2 documentaries out about that, and I think both of them are on Netflix, either Netflix or Tubi. But yeah, the name escapes me.
Because I read that like allegedly he got shot and then beat with a broom handle, but then when you look at like his autopsy report, they say he was beat to the point to where his head was basically decapitated from his shoulders, which I'm like, okay, one woman is capable of doing all that type of damage, and I'm not saying women aren't strong, but if you're getting beat to the point where your head is almost decapitated from your shoulders, I would think that it was probably about 15 people that probably walked in on him and, went ham.
You ever read Fred Dannon's book, Hitman?
Tell me about it. I've never heard of it.
Yeah. I found that book the other day for like $1. But that is probably the premier book that deals with the rise of the music industry. If you ever get a chance, it's called, it shouldn't cost that much. Use Hitman by Frederick Damon, Damon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it goes into the rise of the music industry and that connection.
Right. Because I do know that there's a satirical film that's also out called Hail Caesar, where it was directed by the Coen brothers, where it's a satirical look at old Hollywood
Mm,
back in the day, like RKO, where they literally, these movie studios literally had the power of like life and death over these celebrities back in the day. Like, I give an example of how powerful they were. Like, you remember, what was that one lady that got shot by Tory Lanez?
oh, Meg Thee Stallion.
Yeah. If if the studios had the power that they had back in the day, like they did now,
Mhm.
we would not know about that altercation at
Right,
all.
I agree.
Like, they were really on some like, hey, we gonna hide the fact that this woman is a dope head because she's the face of RKO.
Mhm.
So we're gonna, you know what I'm saying? It was like
Or we gonna hide the fact that you're dating the president of the United States, Marilyn Monroe,
right,
and then you're gonna die of a drug overdose, allegedly.
correct. It's it's like really like powerful forces at work, in terms of entertainment as its relationship to like, propaganda, like even with a lot of these television shows that are coming out now, there's a lot of propaganda that's coming out. If you ever notice like on television when they always have like a pro black character, they're making him severely over the top, like villainous.
Give me an example.
The Butler
Hmm.
with Forrest Whitaker, they made it seem like Danny Oyelowo's character
Oh yeah,
putting
yeah,
boots
yeah.
on the ground was like that was bad, you know. And I'm like, wait a minute, you try to tell us don't be putting boots on the ground?
Or conspiracy brother from Undercover Brother. They try to pretend like he was crazy. Um, who's your bro? Who's the brother from Sharif from Minister Society? He was the outcast. Nobody was listening to. So yeah, they try to marginalize the intelligent black character. Yeah,
It's getting to the point where it's like it's disgusting. Like, I'm like, so you mean to tell me that that's bad? So like, yeah, the propaganda in people's minds are very is very crucial. What did Malcolm X say, that the newspapers can cause you to hate the hero and love the villain?
the media is so powerful in its image making role. He can make your enemy your friend and your friend your enemy.
That's what happened with the Black Panther Party.
How so?
One of the reasons why there was a lot of internal conflicts was because at first, the leaders of the Black Panther Party kind of believed that Stokely was an agent at one point,
Hmm.
and so they fell out. And then what's Cleaver and then Huey fell out
Hmm.
as well. So they just, as Amilcar Cabral said, and what you brought up, the enemy always uses our internal contradictions.
I think I sent you that clip that Bobby Seale said that he kicked Kwame Ture out the Black Panthers because of his views on white people, right?
You gave me the book that came out of.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's
If
It's
I'm
very
lying, the book's lying, and the book uses it as a direct quote, something, and he helped write. It's his book, partly. So, yeah.
even I even have Stokely's autobiography. I read like Stokely's autobiography years ago. He even talked about that.
We're ready for revolution.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very strange how like a lot of us we kind of feel that I don't know, like we need well or we look for white allies
Hmm.
to the point to where it's detrimental.
Hmm. You know what Dr. John Henry Clark said? You have no friends.
Correct.
He has a he has like a lecture on that called "You Have No Friends."
Yeah, it's
But the black bourgeoisie, their theme was always, "We have no friend. We have no permanent enemies or permanent friends, just permanent interests." That's that 10% stuff.
what's the quote again? We have no friends,
We have
permanent
no
enemies.
permanent friends or enemies, just permanent interests.
Mm, mm.
You remember when the boys fell out with people because he wrote that article, I think it was World War I, where he talked about closing ranks. Little short article. But he said that we should put aside our racial differences for the good of America.
He said that.
It's called Closing Ranks. Short article.
See, that's very interesting. And was he part of the? Was he head of the NAACP at that time? Because I know he's one of the
He wasn't ever
founding.
head. He was head. He was part of the NAACP. He was the writer of their newspaper, The Crisis.
Okay,
But he later got kicked out. So. Now, was
right.
that when he was in the NAACP? Yeah, because he wrote it. It's in The Crisis. So yeah, yeah.
See, I remember when I did a YouTube lecture on Paul Robeson
Mm,
and the head of the New York office of the NAACP, Roy Wilkins,
mm,
had said when Paul Robeson was angry that the fact that an African American soldier had his eyes jabbed out
mm,
by police officers, he had said, "Well, if the U.S. government isn't going to protect us, we might as well protect ourselves,"
mm,
meaning armed self-defense.
mm,
Roy Wilkins had read that, and he said, "We will continue to fight for this country no matter how many of us they lynch."
mm.
And it just seems that I don't know when I read the outside, well the non PBS um, story of the NAACP,
Mm.
they're generally always this is just what I've read so far. I'm still reading that it seems that the NAACP has always been against non well they've been against grassroots movements.
They have. They also Joe Spingarn actually worked for military intelligence, and he was one of the higher ups in the NAACP. Joel Spingarn, he actually was part of military intelligence spying on black people, and he actually tried to recruit Du Bois. I think I was just reading a book about William Monroe Trotter, and the name escapes me, but it's in that book, and it's also in I think the 1986 May 1986 commercial appeal out of Memphis. Yeah, he was part of military intelligence spying on people. And he
Mm.
did have a disdain. It's in that book, quoted in that book about Monroe Trotter, William Monroe Trotter. He had a disdain for black militants. And he worked to undermine them. That's documented.
Spingarn.
Spingarn, Joel Spingarn.
See,
You know the
and I don't
Spingarn medal? That guy.
say it again.
The Spingard Medal of Honor, that dude.
Okay. See, I'm gonna phrase. I'm gonna use my language as smoothly as possible
I'm not.
on this subject because I don't want my mentor's channel kind of taken down.
Gotcha.
But it seems that Europeans that I keep saying when it comes to NAACP that Europeans of a particular ethnic group
I got you.
were the ones who funded the NAACP.
That's documented.
And when I was reading Black Crusader, the story of Robert F. Williams by Robert Carl Cohen, you find out that in that book, the NAACP had declined to help black men who were accused of having their way with a white woman. They avoided those types of cases, you know. And I'm just looking at this like, but this is the reason why towns were burned down. You, you know,
In respect to the channel, I'll just give a source if you want to trace the origin of that relationship. Study the lynching of Leo Frank,
okay.
and I'll leave it at that.
Mm. Mm. So also with Cointelpro, I think this still kind of coincides. Do you think that I guess black organizations should take funds from non-African people?
That is a great question. But let me put into context. What organization hasn't? And don't say Garvey because he did.
Ooh, I would have kind of add to that just a little bit.
Mhm.
As many of you don't know, uh, Marcus Messiah Garvey had a very close relationship with the IRA. Specifically, the IRA is the Irish Republican Army, and he had a close relationship with Eamon de Valera. But continue. To paraphrase.
Yeah, that was it. That was it. I
Mm.
just want to drop that in right quick.
So, what black organization hasn't
Yeah,
accepted non-African money?
yeah. I mean, Garvey did in Jamaica, according to history books. He was funded by wealthy white people. Um, the Black Panthers, that Leonard Bernstein, um,
Marlon Brando.
Marlon Brando, Jane Fonda. Read Radical Chic by Tom Wolfe. Radical Chic by Tom Wolfe. Um, I'm trying to think what group did not receive white money at some point. And you can say, well, my group didn't. Well, then you got to look at who hasn't gotten money from the Ford Foundation or the Rockefeller Foundation. I mean,
Mm.
here's the thing: unless unless you want to, the argument would be now you can be like me, hanging on the corner. Even with me, white folks have donated books. You know, not a lot of money, but I know you're giving out books in the community. Here's, whatever, whatever. But you'd be hard pressed to find any group that's really turned down money or grants. There's a book by called White Black Power, White Money by it's a sister. It's called Black Money, White Power. Excellent book.
Mm. See that's interesting. That's interesting. So I wonder how will we be able to safeguard against, like, so we don't have another NAA, like another like pitfall that NAACP had, where
NAACP is
like,
still around. But see, the end, we assume groups are put together to do certain things, but they have the same exact. That's what they were formed to do. They will. We assume people have made a commitment that they never made. The
ooh,
NAACP did exactly what they were formed to do. Joe Spingarn was there from the beginning. You know, so they do what they do.
hmm, we assume that people have made a commitment. Yeah, that is,
Yeah, I mean, you even with black organizations, you make assumptions that this group is going to do is supposed to be doing this when in actuality they never told you that. That's your assumption of what they're supposed to be doing, but they never actually told you they were going to do that.
mm. See, I saw that with the with me reading the autobiographies of many members of the Black Panther Party.
Mhm.
Many people assume that they were just for black people.
Right, and they were black
And
nationalists, and yeah,
then when
they wore the
you
red,
read,
black, and green. Maybe New York wore the red, black, and green, but West Coast now.
yeah, you find that they would call men specifically like I've just got done reading Bobby Seale and Huey Newton.
What seize the time?
And what'd you say?
Seize the time? Bobby
Yes,
Seale?
sir.
Okay.
Where I discovered that they called black people who said these white people, they're never going to help us. The poor whites have been the most racist. They're the Ku Klux Klan. They would Bobby Seale and Huey P. Newton called these black people reactionary
Mm-hmm.
for saying something that is completely true.
Mm-hmm.
Robert F. Williams, who is the grandfather of the Black Panther Party, told the Black Panthers, these Southern poor white people are the ones that are burning crosses, and you want me to be allies with them? Are you serious? So I think that's why your organization, the Black Hoodie Brigade, is very important, because we gotta tell the people that type of info. You know what I'm saying?
But like again, white people have donated books. So does that disqualify? You know, if you're looking at the orthodoxy of we did it black, 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 black. Now it might be a very, very small percentage, but somebody might say, didn't white people give you, donate some books? So I'm trying to see what black organization never accepted Ford Foundation, Rockefeller Foundation, or white philanthropy. There might be some, but
Mm.
or
See,
didn't get part of their income from lecturing on white campuses.
ooh, that Du Bois got a lot of his income doing that. Back in the day, right? Lecturing on
Everybody did.
Malcolm X. I think he lectured a few times at Harvard.
Oxford.
Correct.
There's, I think there's a book called Malcolm X Harvard Speeches, right?
Mm.
I think so.
Because I read that in his autobiography that he lectured at Oxford and Harvard and Atlanta, all of these universities that are white funded, like even a lot of these HBCUs. I went to a HBCU, I went to Harris Stowe. A lot of these, mostly all these HBCUs are white funded.
Who's Spellman named after?
Who is Spelman named after?
One of the Rockefellers. That's
Really?
Rockefeller family, yeah.
Well, I had no idea.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's interesting. And then it's like we wonder why, a lot of the educated are not loyal to their own once they get out.
I
Like,
think that because I went to a HBCU, and my theory is that being part of the intelligentsia and the various manifestations of the talented tenth, on the outside looking in, I think if you people are honest and say it teach you how to navigate through white America. Period.
hmm
Now, what does that mean for the masses? Garvey had his analysis. That was part of the Du Bois Garvey conflict.
mm,
But I guess I'm bringing all this up is that we have to avoid being holier than thou or blacker than thou when history really doesn't substantiate what we're doing. Now, a lot of people say, well, that's an excuse to sell out. No, I'm just talking history. Now, the question has been, does that affect your politics? Does that affect your politics? Does that sway your politics?
mm.
And that's not for me to say. I mean, if Marlon Brando wanted to help the Panthers arm 10,000 people with no strings attached,
Mm. Even what Professor Clark said in one of his lectures that I think that we have to like really pay attention to.
what's that?
He said in one of his lectures, he's not above having a Brit going to one of these archives and grabbing a few books on like African history that they don't have black people getting into and everything like that. He's not above the I need them for a particular time period.
Mm-hmm.
Even one of my favorite revolutionaries of all time, Ho Chi Minh.
Hmm.
We know that Ho Chi Minh was for the Comintern, and he had American and Russian forces give him weapons so he could free up French Indochina. But until they found out what his deal was, it was already too late. But he used Europeans to a point where they could just get him the necessary funds and money, and then he went on his way, and the Vietnamese are free now.
Do you believe in the spook that's set by the door theory?
Uh, I've read the book and watched the movie. I could in America I think that the people who are watching already have contingency plans for that. So if that were to happen, we'll be out by next week or the weekend.
Mm-hmm. That's what I was going to say. You don't think they have that built in, a safety valve built in that might happen? I mean, it's good theater.
Right.
But when it's good theater in theory, you can outsmart the CIA. You can be part of the CIA. They will never see it coming. That's good in theory. But you're talking about people who control the planet. You think they're that dumb? But it sounds good. It made good theory, and it made a good excuse for people who really want to have their cake and eat it too.
Right. Still a
When they got called out, well, I'm the spook that's set by the door, and 20, 30 years from now, I'm going to reveal the information to you. Okay.
are you going to be around to where you're going to be able to reveal the information? Because I remember I saw a documentary called Wormwood, where it talked about this scientist who was like working on nuclear weapons or something like that, right? And so,
Is that Oppenheimer?
what'd you say?
Was it Oppenheimer?
No, it wasn't.
Or different
It
story?
wasn't Oppenheimer. His
Okay.
name was I forget his name, but it's called Wormwood. It's on Netflix.
Okay.
Where it was this white guy. He was working on nuclear weapons, and this was around MK Ultra time.
Mm.
And so the CIA, when he wound up like leaving, he just wound up leaving. Like he didn't defect. He just said, "I'm finding something else to do."
Mhm.
The CIA was constantly watching him, and they were writing reports like, "Yeah, he's going crazy." And then we're afraid that he's going to reveal something. And allegedly, he wound up committing suicide by jumping out of a 25-story window, right? But here's the kicker. He allegedly jumped out this 25-story window, but they didn't see any lacerations on his body to prove that he jumped out the window. So, with you bringing up how like I'm gonna be this, like you gotta have an black intelligence person that might say, I'm gonna be the spook who sat by the door and reveal information in the future. You already got one dude that got your license plate that's following you. Even Netflix, the movie company, Netflix, they be Mike Coulter, the guy who plays Luke Cage, said that Netflix, they have people that are following the celebrities, just in case the script is leaked out or something. They could like,
Wow, really?
yeah, they can grab the script off the train, and they got people that are constantly watching them. So
I did not know that.
we got movie studios.
Send me that when
People.
we get off here.
Oh yeah, I got you. I got you.
I did
Mike
not know that.
said that. So we got movie studios that's watching actors just in case scripts get leaked. And we already know the CIA still follows their people. So
Do you remember when Alicia Keys um, started wore the AK-47 around her neck and started talking about the conspiracy and recanted the next day?
I don't remember.
She recanted the next day, but she was dropping it. She was revealing all this stuff, and she had an AK-47 around her neck, and she recanted the next day.
Mm. That, I guess that knock on the door that really puts. See, one of my former mentors even told me this, right? When I was in college, he said, and I'll never forget that. He said, Kuhani, you know, um, you gotta really think about what a revolutionary means, because let's just be real. Do you still want to be a revolutionary when them people in suits knock on your door and then they say, "Oh, we know you're associated with these groups of people, and what you doing? Are you gonna be scared?" It's okay to be scared, but are you gonna give up? Because I've had people that I've mentored, just like yourself, who I've trained them, coddled them, everything. Then they told me that they got that knock on the door and now they DJing at parties.
Mhm. I mean, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about that. I was going to talk about the mentor. Well, I didn't really know him personally. We've talked before, but we've talked before. But somebody that I modeled my whole politics after, and I really thought that he was moving one way, but in actuality, at the end of his life, he had kind of changed direction. I was like, what? So the bottom line is we can't be so. We got to separate theory from practice because a lot of things sound good in theory, but when you put it to practice, unless you want to limit your scope to talking on YouTube.
It that and that's what I see a lot now. The social media has given a lot of people on YouTube, um, they've given them a fake sense of being a pseudo revolutionary, right? Where yeah, I can talk on YouTube for about 3 to 4 hours, and then I can cut it off and go to sleep, and I can think that I'm doing something. And that's why with me, I interview people like you. I'm a I'm attracted to people who are of the boots on the ground energy, not the soapbox.
Mm.
You know, and it's yeah, it's given YouTube has given people a sense of pseudo revolutionaryship. You know,
So I mean, even if you get a strong YouTube channel and let's say TMZ or Vice offers you a contract, you turning it down?
whoo,
I mean, is it worth the sacrifice? In theory, but here's the thing, brother. And I like talking to you as a younger brother because I'm like twice your age.
right?
And I'm older than twice your age, but I like talking to younger people because I'm old enough to see theory and practice play out. I'm old enough to see people change positions and don't apologize for nothing. I'm old enough to see people who were radical, pro black, fight the power in college, and that lasted until they got their first job after they graduated. And then you see them 3 years later. Yeah, I used to be radical in college. See, I'm old enough to see all that play out. I'm old enough to have read where Marcus Garvey, who is probably the blackest man, ideological wise, ever, died in poverty with two white roommates.
Mm.
So there's theory and there's practice. You can go by the theory, but then it's practice. What can you do? I'll put it this way. I had a strong mentor, Brother Hatada, who kept me in bounds. He used to a former Black Panther. And he shaped my ideology early. Be the you can be 24 hours a day. Be the you can be 24 hours a day. That's why one reason I went into the ministry. You were activists, you can cut that on. I was fighting the liquor companies, billionaires, calling my house in the 90s for putting 40 ounces in the neighborhood because Coach Powell wrote the book, but I was doing a lot of the groundwork. Yeah, that's the true story. But I saw the activism side. But one day, after Coors called my house, their attorney called my house and left a message that we have permanent interest and da 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 da, and you don't want to do this and you don't want to do that. Called my house with my 2-year-old baby girl. She wasn't even 2. Infant child. Coors calling my house with a subtle threat because I exposed them putting something called Fat Boy Malt liquor in the black community, and the reporter found out that they signed the paperwork. they're going to call my house a lead attorney with a subtle threat. At that point, brother, I knew if I didn't go into the ministry, they would kill me. I had to grasp on to something that I was willing to die for. That activism stuff, that pro-black stuff, maybe, possibly, but that religion, that's before God. See the difference? I can swing back and forth with the pro-black stuff, with the activism stuff. I can go right now and get a Ford Foundation grant and I would still be seen in high esteem because I'll take 20 kids to Disney World and y'all wouldn't look at me no different. Actually would probably look at me in a better light because I get $100,000 and I bought these kids new sneakers. You can play with the activism stuff. You can play with even the pro-black. So I call it the dirty dashiki theory. If you ain't got no dirt on your dashiki, you ain't real. You can play with they played with the pro-black stuff in the 70s. Richard Nixon said, okay, all you pro-black people, I'm gonna send you to college under the GI Bill. He also said, okay, all you pro-black people, it ain't about black power, it's about green power. Those businesses that started in the 70s, that was Richard Nixon money. That was green power money. Those doctors who got their doctorate degree in the 70s, that was Richard Nixon money because he said, I would rather have you in the classroom than rioting in the streets. That's the reality. You got theory and you got practice. How many groups were funded by the Ford Foundation? How many black documentaries, when you look at the end, it says funded by the Ford Foundation? Theory and practice. Sometimes we're too judgmental, man. And our judgmentalness does not fit reality. Be the person you can be 24 hours a day. What are you willing to die for? That's why religion, spirituality is important because as a minister, I took a charge before God that I would do certain things. As a Black Messiah, my ministry is the Black Messiah movement. We go by Isaiah 61 verses 1 through 4. That's a charge. Regardless of what happens, this is the charge. And that's something every man got to make up for his own self, man, your own mind. What are you willing to die for? Once you find out what you're willing to die for, everything else is simple. You don't have the contradictions. You say, well, I'll do it. I ain't willing to die for that. I'll do that, but I ain't willing to die for that. That over there, yeah, I'll die for that. And that makes your decision process a lot easier. Be the you can be. Find a level you can be of radicalness or whatever 24 hours a day and not deviate. I'll give you a personal example.
Mm-hmm.
I've been on Fox News a couple of times.
Yes.
Whatever I said to Sean Hannity, can I walk amongst the public the next day and say I didn't say it? Could I go out in the public and haven't been seen by, what's Fox viewership? Probably about what? A couple of million a night?
Think maybe? So.
Yeah, a couple of million a night at least. Can I go on Sean Hannity with red, black, and green wristband and a white Jesus versus black Yahshua t-shirt and go out in the public and say with my real name and go out in the public the next day and say I didn't say it? No. Find the you can be 24 hours a day. Then you won't have to deal with the contradictions.
Minister, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Because this is what I used to believe years ago, and now as I've grown older, I see that there was a problem in my thinking. I used to believe that years ago, if you're like a revolutionary and you have a family, I used to believe that's going to be a bit of a hindrance because you're going to be thinking about like your family. You get that that knock on the door, etc. But I can remember one of my friends told me that, like, look, Kuhani, if we was on the different sides of he said, Kuhani, I have a family. And Kuhani, if me and you were on different sides of the battlefield, I would kill you because I'm fighting for my family. I'm fighting to free my family. You're fighting for ideals because you don't have one.
That's real.
Like, I'm going to be thinking about going home. I'm going to do whatever I can to go back home to my family. And so I want to ask you, and I've also heard this too, that I've heard a lot of cats who are older say that they don't trust people who don't have family. And so I would have asked, does you having a family, having grandchildren, wife, everything, does that make you fight way harder than someone like me who doesn't have a family? Does that give you a extra sense of, I have something? I'm not fighting for ideals. I'm fighting for the next generation that comes after me to be free.
Like I just said, brother, a couple before we get to this segment, where are you willing to die for? My family, that's one of the things I'm willing to die for. But I'll tell you this. My and a sister asked something in the comments too I want to address. But my mentor, Brother Todd, who's no longer with us, he was lecturing at a college, university, and somebody posed the same question almost to him. Posed the question, well, how can I be a revolutionary or revolutionist and still raise a family? You know what Brother Todd asked him? Don't you think we had families? What are you willing to die for? It's not, claim no easy victories. There are no easy victories. It takes commitment. I used to say sacrifice. Sister Mae Jackson, who used to be part of the SNCC, you probably seen her on documentaries back in the day. She said it ain't about sacrifice, it's about commitment. What are you willing to commit to? And that's the bottom line, brother. What are you commit? Are you willing to die for your family? I've seen people in the world where people will die for you stepping on their sneakers. It's where you place your values. And really, death ain't the worst outcome for some people. Some people would rather die than lose all their money. Athletes, entertainers. After the stock exchange, people were jumping out of buildings. I mean, during the Great Depression, after the stock market fell, people were jumping out of buildings. I'd rather die than be broke. That's what they did. They jumped out of buildings. Want me to answer that question?
Yes, you can.
Think about the move situation. That is I suggest everybody studies that, because that shows the draconian measures that not only the FBI, but police departments, Frank Rizzo and the mayor's office and all of them, they would go to establish law and order. I don't know any of them. Free Mumia. I don't know any of them. Nope, scratch. I did meet Pam Africa once. I was speaking in Harlem, and I met Pam Africa once, and I'm like, I'm scared of you, sister. You the most. Yeah, I met Pam Africa once, and she is probably the most fiery, uncompromising. We only had a brief discussion, but I seen her talk on different shows. Between her and Daruba Ben Jaruba, brother Daruba, who I've never met. Nope, scratch. I heard him lecture once, but we never actually met. But between those two, I think they are probably the most revolutionary people still living.
Yeah. Me myself personally, I don't know too much about the move. Wasn't the move? Wasn't they
Philadelphia?
Normally,
James Africa, when Frank Rizzo bombed their tenement because people complained about the animals and the smell. So he dropped bombs on airplanes and burnt babies and children. Yeah. And Momia's is tied into that.
Yeah, I think when he was before he was incarcerated, I think he wrote an article talking about it. I think I remember this from the greatest documentary on him. It's called Long Distance Revolutionary.
Where's that now?
Where's the documentary?
Yeah, where's it streaming? I want to see it.
I think it's on YouTube.
I've seen it. I have seen it. Okay, I've seen it. I've seen it. Is that when they're really talking about his radio show?
Yes, and they brought up that there's a lot of strange things that the Philadelphia Police Department was doing to the witnesses, whether it be a prostitute or somebody who one of the witnesses came. Even there was a documentary that was like around that time period where they talked about how this one guy who I think he saw something, and he kept writing out the statement, and they kept ripping his state. He says that the Philadelphia Police Department kept ripping his statement up and saying, write one we want you to write. Allegedly.
For that documentary, yeah.
Allegedly. So, it's real. And then even people was in dumpsters. So, it's a lot of weird stuff, with that whole thing. It's I think even in Philadelphia, they tell like black reporters you can't say anything on it.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia has an interesting history just all around.
Yeah, I even remember when it was a white guy, white newscaster. He said, if you really want to know how racist Philadelphia is, why is it that they have a statue of Rocky Balboa, but they don't have a statue of Joe Frazier, or I think it was Wilt Chamberlain? Is Joe Frazier from Philly?
Yeah, Joe Frazier.
Yeah, he said they have a statue of Rocky Balboa, but they don't have one of Joe Frazier.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a lot of weird things going on. She says, isn't he on Black Media News? I think she was talking about somebody.
Mumia?
I think it was a guy you brought up like a little beforehand. I think that's what she's talking about.
Because Mumia was on, I think, Pacifica, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't know what Daruba means.
Oh, Daruba Ben Rahad.
Okay.
Oh, you talking about, is he on Brother Daruba? Is he on with Dr. Jared Ball? Yeah, that's him. Yeah, he's on the Mix What You Like. Yeah, Black Power Media. Yeah, he's a guest up there a lot. Yeah, Dr. Ball used to have me on his show, his blog, back about 20 years ago.
Really?
Yeah, because he's the one that gave. He used to do something called "Mix What I Like" CDs, and I stole the idea from him to make CDs. Yeah, him and Kalanji. I used to be on Kalanji's show too. But yeah, um, I got the idea from Dr. Ball um, to mix hip hop with speeches. Yeah, I got the idea from him.
Hmm. Um. So, Minister Paul Scott, do you have any closing words to the audience of Paradigm Shift 314?
I just want to say it's always an honor because we can just talk and and I can be like open on this show, and I appreciate that. But I just wanted to, as always, shout out to Black Hoodie Brigade. The Black Hoodie Brigade is going well. Um, no leader. I might have technically come up with the name, but it was actually the youth. And all we do is spread knowledge in our city. That's it. The Black Messiah movement. That's my ministry. And we always say in the Black Messiah movement, our benediction and our closing is stop waiting for a savior and be one.
Mm-hmm. And there you have it, folks. We had a great activist, and I'll bring him on in the future for updates, etc. Um, Good night, everyone.